Okay, so welcome to our breakout room. Laura and I work together, and we're going to be talking about how we use guided reading to launch STEAM projects at our school. But really, we're going to be taking you through the steps of our coaching our staff on this. So you could really use any visions that you've been asked to implement by your admin or your district and just substitute them for what we did. But since this was all sponsored by a science organization, I thought we might try something that was a little bit more science leaning. So Laura Ellis is our academic coach. She's like the official coach for the school, and I'm the STEAM lead for the school. That was basically a volunteer position that turned into way more work than I thought it would, but it's great because now I can put STEAM lead / coach after my name on everything. So she's like the official coach, and I'm the silly one that volunteered for the position.
She's an overachiever. So I'm going to hop in if you don't mind. So I've been coaching at our site this is my third year. And my second year coaching, I had a baby, so I don't even remember that whole year. And this year has been super crazy with the pandemic and distance learning and everything. So I still feel like a new coach. And then my first year coaching was a lot of sort of admin responsibility. So I've kind of just, I've been coaching for a while, but I still am like, am I really doing this right? And I think everyone sort of feels that way at some point or another. So just know that, I'm learning just along with you guys as well. So we work in Marina, California, which is right by Monterey. Our site is a yes site. And what I mean by that is we accept all things. We're like Avid, done. STEAM, done. We'll take it, we'll do it, and we'll do a great job. Which can be a good thing, but also can make things a little tricky when it comes to doing things right. I think sometimes we take on too many things, which I know a lot of other sites do as well. But so we've been doing STEAM, Katie, for what, 4 years now?
Well, it was talked about when I got there 4 years ago. And the question was, what the heck is a STEAM school? So then we spent about a year or two just trying to wrap our heads around what is a STEAM school. The district was like, we want you to be a STEAM school, but we have no idea what this means. So I'll walk you through what I did to try to figure out what our definition of a STEAM school is. And then we really started to put it into motion last year. That was when we got all the momentum going, and then it just crashed and burned in March when we went to quarantine. So we're going to be picking it back up again next year.
Yes. So just keep in mind that we're, still evolving as a STEAM school. And I think, obviously there's lots of changes happening all the time, but Katie has really been a huge catalyst for so many amazing things that you'll see in our presentation today. So did you want to you kind of already did an intro, Katie, did you want to add anything? I don't know.
Yeah, we're a Title I school. We struggle with a lot of behavior issues at our school. So that's just a little bit of background. Like, we are not a perfect school. We have a lot of other things that we're working on. And so when you see what we do today, it's kind of like Facebook, like you're seeing the glossy pictures of things. But this is doable and implementable anywhere. We don't have a lot of funding. Right next door, we have Pacific Grove, and Carmel, they have so much more money and resources and stuff. So this is what you can do if you pick yourselves up by your bootstraps and say, this is what we're going to do.
Yep. Cool.
And Laura, who's your favorite innovator?
I don't know. I don't know if I've ever had to think about this. I guess Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, okay.
He's
okay.
Cool.
My favorite innovator is Walt Disney, 100%. I'm totally into Disney and Imagineering. Laura knows I'm obsessed with Disney, but I'm also obsessed with how they create and what goes on behind the scenes with them. Regina, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us what your role is at your site and who your favorite innovator is.
Sure. My name is Regina Powers. I am the district librarian and also the only librarian for Anaheim Union High School District. It's about 20 schools, junior high and high school combined. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's fun. My favorite innovator, I like Walt Disney too, but I'm gonna say I like any creative authors who like invented a genre. So if you're talking to Poe, you know, Mary Shelley,
Mhm.
any of the authors that invented something from nothing, I love that.
That's great. Somebody who took a risk and followed their passion and then it became a thing. That's
Yeah.
great. Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I am the curriculum specialist at the California School for the Deaf in Riverside, and I work with the alternate education department,
Mhm.
which means that they typically do not have a hand-me curriculum. It has to all be adapted for the students' levels and unique needs.
Okay.
And I am collaborating with the other specialist on our campus who is focused on STEAM K to 12, and we're trying to get a program up and running that addresses the lack of our students' needs in being prepared for arriving in high school at the CTE pathways.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Well, hopefully our presentation really helps with that. I'll touch a little bit on career readiness at the end if we have time, because I did work a lot with that at our site.
Okay.
Great. So we have a little timeline here for you because I always like to know where a presentation is going. So we're going to start by talking about the vision that the district gave us to implement guided reading. And at the time, our teachers were doing small groups with their ELA instruction and had to really switch their mindset to guided reading. It doesn't sound like a big switch, but Laura's going to talk to you about what that looked like, the supports that we put in place. You'll have access to some professional development slides that we used with our teachers and some pushback that we got and how she dealt with that. And then I'm going to talk about how at the same time the district was asking us to become a STEAM school, which feels like two opposite ends of the spectrum. So we were asking to focus all this energy and time on reading, but also completely revolutionize the way we're doing things in school with science, technology, engineering, art, and math. How do you combine those two? So we're going to talk about how we combined the visions and then how we took it to the next level. Okay, Laura, so go ahead and tell us what you did with the district vision for guided reading.
Yeah, so actually, Katie, if you could jump ahead to the slide that has the pictures of the resources. Yeah, so just a little background on the things that we use at our site and our district. We use Benchmark Education as our ELA curriculum. We use Fontes and Pinnell for our running records assessments. And then based on that data, we use Jan Richardson, the Next Step Forward in Guided Reading resource, which I love. And we do have some resources linked to that if you are interested in those at the end today. But just to give you a little bit of background on the resources that we did have available to us. So when we started guided reading, teachers were doing, some teachers were pulling small groups already. It was, I'd say like 50-50.
I was not. I'll put it out there. I was not.
And to be really honest, like we still don't have 100% of people pulling guided reading groups right now, especially with the pandemic and everything going on. And so the small groups were very I want to use the word old school. It was very much everyone had a book and we were popcorn reading, or there was choral reading going on where all the kids had to read at the same time, or they would read a page and then go to the next student. And it was just very anxiety filling for students. And so when guided reading was introduced, it was a much more not structured approach. It was a much more guided approach that had sections that like for the beginning, for the intro, there was a book walk or a picture walk. And then after the picture walk, there was a word work activity. And so it was very laid out, but with freedom to do what students needed within the structure. And the big thing about guided reading for our site, and I think a lot of sites in our district that stood out, was that independent reading. And so the students it's at the student level that is needed from the Fontes and Pinnell running record. And then we would push in and just listen to students independently read. And that way we could say, hey, you know what, this might be too hard for them, or this is too easy for them. They need to go to a different group. And so teachers needed a ton of support in grouping students, because really the purpose of guided reading is to be targeting students at their instructional level, because a lot of teachers were just pulling kids based on either, and I shouldn't say a lot, but some teachers were pulling kids just based on where they sat at a table, or information that didn't help them really for their reading skills. And so guided reading was just a lot more targeted and a lot more intentional in terms of the support that students need, going from the small groups that we had in the past.
Yeah, so teachers had to gather a lot of data. They had to be really intentional in their planning. They had to use very specific resources. And then in PLCs, they had to report out like successes and failures. So it was also a ton more accountability than the small groups.
It was a lot. And even being in the classroom, I've been doing guided reading, or I did guided reading as a teacher for almost my whole teaching career. And the first time I did it, I was like, this is crazy. No, like I cannot sustainably do this every day. And so we'll talk about sort of the pushback that we got from teachers in just a second, and how we dealt with that. So these are just some examples from the Jan Richardson book that we have linked. She has a ton of resources for comprehension, for basically everything that's on this right-hand side form. She has resources for, which is super helpful. And it can also be overwhelming if you don't know what you're looking for or where to find it. And so a lot of our PDs, or a lot of my coaching cycles, have been centered around like, okay, let's focus on this one part of this planning template and hash it out and see what we can find. So it's a lot of information, which can be overwhelming. But that's where we really broke it down with teachers and said, look, take everything else out. Let's just focus on the book introduction. Keep it super simple. What is the goal for today, right? So being able to tell teachers it's okay to not do the whole thing was really helpful for them. And on the left-hand side, there's just the different cards that teachers have available to them based on the goal for the session. So if you have students that are struggling with comprehension, or maybe specifically vocabulary, obviously you would use this card to help guide your guided reading prompts at the end to help students improve in the specific areas that are needed for them.
And using visuals with teachers is so important. I have ADHD, and so just as I would for my students that have learning differences, I would give them visuals to walk through. If you do a presentation for teachers and say, okay, these are the 3 parts to a guided reading lesson, but there is no checklist or anything for them to write on, it's not going to be as effective as if you can scaffold them with these visuals. And also these cards, Laura had offered to like photocopy them in color and hole punch them and put them on the key rings for everybody. The more you can provide the resources for your teachers that you want them to use, the more likely they are to actually have those ready to use and use them. They may not get around to cutting them and hole punching them themselves. So it's a little extra step for the coaches, but it will make all the difference in your implementation.
This is just I took a couple photos of the way we have our book room organized. So with our benchmark advanced curriculum, we get books that are leveled. And so what we did, or my principal and I took like 2 or 3 days to take all the books, because they're not organized by level, they're organized by grade. And each grade, there's about 4 or 5 different levels in there. But I was like, you know what? No, let's throw out that system, because teachers aren't going to be able to find the books that they want that are at a specific level. And so we took all the books from every grade level and put them in their letter correlation, and then separated them by fiction and nonfiction, because we noticed a lot of our nonfiction test scores were much lower than our fiction, which ties in with the STEM. We wanted to make sure that teachers knew exactly where to find the nonfiction and emphasize that it's a priority for our site as well, because teachers tend to, it's just a thing, tend to veer towards fiction because it's more fun. So we really wanted to lay it out and be like, looky, here's the nonfiction. That's what we want to be focusing on. So you can see just kind of how we have it leveled by letter over there. And then the bag on the left is how I know where to put it back. So we actually did have the teachers do this part on the left-hand side where it's put into the bag with the title and the level. We did have teachers do that when they first got their curriculum. We didn't have to do that part, but the rest of the organization we did do.
It's also helpful because I teach 5th grade and kids come into my classroom reading at a 1st or 2nd grade level, but those books were not provided in the 5th grade curriculum. For some reason, book publishers think that kids that are in 5th grade just magically read at the 5th grade level. So now I have access to all the different reading levels of the books without having to walk down to a 1st or 2nd grade classroom and ask to borrow their books.
Oh, and I also wanted to, hold on, sorry. I want to explain our system too, so we know who has the books. I should have taken a third photo in hindsight, but we have a chart, a big board with teacher names on it. And so inside each bag is a card with the title of the book. Once they get the bag, they take the card out and stick it in their name. And then when they come back, they put the card back in and return the book. And that way I can be like, oh, I really am looking for people who use magnets at work. Oh, Katie has that. Let me go grab it from her. And that way we can also keep track of the books, because our librarian gets really sassy when we lose books. I don't blame her, but it's a better way to track instead of just allowing teachers to take whatever books, because they will get lost. And they still do, but it's just a little extra layer of accountability. So not all teachers were pumped about guided reading or STEAM, but we definitely sort of help. What helps is that our teachers at our site are amazing, but just giving them permission to sort of be where they're at was really helpful. I think my site leader is really great about accepting, like, you know what, if you don't want to do the whole thing right now, just start with one piece. Start somewhere, right? And so that was just a mindset that we kind of all had that was really helpful, of saying, like, you don't have to do all of this at once. It's impossible to do all of it at once. And so we sort of took it step by step. So I did a ton of model lessons in classrooms with teachers that were unsure about how to utilize the new structure, less videos, teacher observation. So they went to observe each other. Support with planning. So a lot of teachers were like, this is so much for me. And I'd sit down with them with the actual template and say, which pieces of this seem doable for you? Great, let's just do those pieces, because once they kind of got the ball rolling on the pieces that were attainable for them, they wanted to add more onto their plate. Once they were comfortable and got the routine down, they were like, okay, now I can do word work with magnets. Okay, now I can add this. And so just keep it simple. And then I said, go slow to go fast, because I was like, just start somewhere, right? It's like taking that first action step was super helpful. And whether that was me coming in and co-teaching, a couple of teachers, I actually co-taught a guided reading group with them. And that sort of helped ease their fears into starting it. And even then, even with doing that, I still had some teachers that were doing like the choral reading, and I am a recovering people pleaser, and I didn't want to tell them like, hey, you're doing it wrong. And so what I would do is I would have them go observe another teacher, and they would go, oh, wow, they're not doing choral reading. And I'm like, yeah, maybe we should try it. But anyway, definitely just giving grace, giving simple first steps was super helpful for us, and we still had teacher pushback, and we still do, but for the most part our teachers are on board and understand the importance of having guided reading to further students learning and in general, but especially with those nonfiction texts that we need for them to be able to further their STEM learning as well, or STEAM learning. So these are some resources. They're PDs that I've run in the past. They're not as beautiful as Katie's, but they're just good starting points if you're interested in using those. We also, the district provided us a spreadsheet of which STEM scopes to pair with which benchmark. Help me out, Katie, with benchmark
reading books.
Right. So the units of benchmark we paired with the STEM scope. And so we were able to sort of match those up throughout the year so that it was all aligned and didn't seem random. It still sometimes doesn't work out perfect, but you can absolutely access all of these at your leisure. And yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much, Laura. So our next vision given to us by the district was to become a STEM school. And I did hours of research on what is a STEM school and what does a STEM school look like. And there is nothing out there. If you are looking to make $1 million, create a book on how to build a STEM school, because it does not exist. So what I ended up doing is taking all of the the NGSS standards for science. And you can see here, I kind of put them under the buckets of chemistry, biology, physics, and earth science, because that's how my brain works. And then by grade level. So I could see like every single grade had something in biology, but only 2nd and 5th grade hit chemistry. So I kind of started here with my thinking. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe we could somehow do like every month our school has a different theme. So like maybe September is classifying matter, and then October is changing matter, and we move the standards up and down so that every grade level has a standard. But that wasn't really working. And when I brought it to the staff, they said, that's too much. Like, we're going through science too fast. It's too many things for us to teach. So then we went to a trimester system. So we decided that each trimester would be earth science, life science, or physical science. And I took all of our STEM units for each grade level, and I put it on sort of like a little flyer. And I said, choose 2 of these science units that you want to teach this trimester. You know, teaching, what is that, 7 science units, and over here we have, 10 or whatever. That's a lot. That's overwhelming for teachers. And science wasn't being taught because teachers were so overwhelmed. So by vertically aligning, the whole school was working on life science. Each grade level was choosing just a couple of STEM scopes to focus on. I could suddenly declare trimester 2 is life science trimester, and all the speakers and presentations and assemblies that I scheduled would be around life science, and I could invite any grade level to come see them because they're all doing life science. And with these little flyers, I knew how to coach the grade levels. So I also tend to be very generous in my resources that I want to give other people, which I say generous, they say overwhelming, you decide. So in order to pull back from that, because part of coaching is realizing when you are giving too much, I offered all the different things that I could do for them down here. I could schedule a field trip for them. I could bring in a guest speaker. I could create some small group science centers for them, et cetera. And the grade level could check the boxes of the things that they wanted for that trimester. So some grade levels checked all the boxes. They were like, great, do all of it for us. Other grade levels are like, we are not there yet with our science. Please just, schedule 1 field trip for us, or whatever it might be. So these were the forums that I lived and died by when coaching my grade levels, because I could see exactly which units they were working on, exactly what resources they wanted. And so then I could schedule meetings with individual teachers or grade levels and check in and see if they felt that they were supported enough in the science. Once we had kind of decided that we were going to do this trimester system, and by we, I mean Laura, our principal, and myself, I presented to the staff. So I had a presentation, which is in the Google Drive, so you'll have access to it. And I really walked step by step through how we came to the idea of vertical aligning through the semesters and what supports would be offered to them, what expectations there would be for them, just so it was very, very clear how our school was going to be transitioning into this STEM sort of theme. And this meeting was incredibly nerve-wracking because anytime you go to staff and you say, we are going to completely change the way that we're doing something with curriculum, you just have to put your armor on. You know, there were teachers that were so silent during that meeting. We have a teacher and he is very science focused, and I knew I just blew up his whole world because he, you know, there were certain times of the year he did his units and he was going to have to change that around. So we just gave them lots of processing time. You can see here the reflection slide. We had lots of reflection slides, turn and talk, process, vent, yell at us, whatever you need to do. And then we took that feedback and made any adjustments that needed to be made. So anytime you are trying to change the hearts and minds of staff with a vision, it's important to do the logistics on the back end. Too many cooks in the kitchen, and we never would have gotten our trimester system and the flyers. But then you also have to bring it to staff in a gentle way and say, this is what we're thinking. We're here to listen. We're not going to change the whole structure here, but we could tweak it a little bit if needed. So then at this point, we gave the grade levels quite a bit of time to meet and talk and plan throughout the professional developments. What supports do you need? What science units are you going to do this trimester? I met with them a ton. You know, coaching is all about the meetings that you have with people. So you have to schedule those meetings, even if they don't want to meet, which they probably won't. You have to say, okay, we are going to meet. We need to talk about this. I have to know where you are with things. After that, we began creating the physical supports for the STEAM at our school. So you saw how with Laura, we created graphic organizers and prompts on the key rings, things like that. Well, with science, you have to have physical goods to do your science experiments. And we did not want our teachers buying that themselves. I am adamant that, you know, teachers spend way too much on their classrooms. So that is when I embarked on creating maker spaces in our school. So this is an example of the maker space in my classroom. You can see we just used little shoe boxes with labels, and you'll have a copy of all those labels in the Google Drive. These are like screw and nail holders I got off Amazon. The pegboard is just from Home Depot, and I fill it with anything and everything. I drink a lot of bottled water in the classroom because I hate washing out reusable water bottles. It's terrible. I'm a science teacher and I drink bottled water, but I throw all the bottle caps in here for the kids. I mean, like everything that we use in there, if I can find anything, I just throw it back here for the kids to use in their designs. This is what all of our science stuff looked like when I walked into this project. We just had boxes of physical supplies from central office that came with our program, and I turned it into this. So we got shelving. I did just hours of sorting. We got some movable tables that could be reconfigured in the STEM lab for groups. We had sort of an art area. This is a wide-eyed view of the STEAM room. So we put a green screen in over here. I did a couple of Donors Choose projects. These rainbow folders in the back all have graphic organizers for design thinking. The file cabinet will have STEM projects for every grade level, so plus the supplies for them. So if a teacher comes in and is like, I'd like to do a STEM project, but I have no idea what, they could just open up a file cabinet and all the copies and supplies would already be in there. This is an example of the labels, which you'll have a copy of that I put on the shoe boxes. Pretty simple, but Organization is everything. Our teachers are doing so much more science now that they know exactly where the popsicle sticks are. Before, they're like, oh, I don't really want to go to the Dollar Tree and buy popsicle sticks. So then they just wouldn't do the science experiment. But I have teachers coming to me every single day. Hey, can you help me find this or that in the STEM room? And I know exactly where it is because my label is on it. So then the next question is, okay, why did you talk to us all about guided reading and then talk to us about STEAM? How are these two things connected? Well, we needed to bring them together. So once our teachers understood exactly how to run a guided reading group, which Laura had really scaffolded them on and walked them through slowly, and after I had vertically aligned our science units so that they knew, okay, we're working on physical science or life science or earth science, we said, now we need to combine the two. So we're going to start asking you to bring in nonfiction about whatever the science topic is for the trimester into your guided reading groups. And we had those books in the book room. So I could go in and find a book on magnets like Laura held up for my guided reading group, or I could go on any of these sites and print out articles to use with my kids. These are all free sites here. The Scholastic News isn't free, but I just love it so much. And even if you got one subscription for your whole school, you could photocopy it. I mean, you could keep like the masters in the library and photocopy it for everybody. It's fabulous. News ELA, Tween Tribune, and Epic all allow you to get the same article, but change the lexile level. So for me, I have kids reading at the 1st and 2nd grade level in 5th grade, and I have kids reading at the 7th and 8th grade level. So I can use the same exact article, but differentiate the reading level in my guided reading groups. So they're all reading about the same topic, just at different levels. So our next step was to really emphasize during that guided reading time, please be bringing in nonfiction reading that goes with the theme for that trimester. These are 3 websites that are infographic websites too. So math is so hard to bring into STEAM. It doesn't seem like it would be, but it really is. So if you use infographics, you can start to bring in some statistics as well. So we have our guided reading that the teachers got the training on, got the resources on for nonfiction. Now we're going to use that guided reading nonfiction excitement and curiosity as a base for our design thinking and physical models in the STEAM process. So here's an example. These are some Native American artifacts that my students made using our makerspace after reading about Native Americans. And the twist was, our focus was Native Americans using natural resources to create their culture. So my students had to read about how the Plains Native Americans would have had very different artifacts from the Pueblo Indians, or Native Americans, sorry, over in the Southwest, because their natural resources were very different. So we're bringing in ecosystems, we're bringing in the natural world with science. The students are reading about it in guided reading groups, and then they are creating their physical models using the makerspace. This is another example of an article. I use this every year from News ELA. Again, I can get different lexiles for my students. It's about the trash on Mount Everest. So we read the article in our guided reading groups using all those great strategies that Laura gave us. And then there are at least 3 different questions that I could use to jumpstart a design thinking unit. How can we help mountain climbers bring their trash down easier? My students have designed everything from backpacks to conveyor belts and actual physical items. You know, I mean, obviously they don't work, but, you know, showing how they would work. How can we help clean up the existing trash on the mountain? And how can we create biodegradable items for climbers to use? These questions spark other reading research that they need to do. Okay, so they need to figure out, how do you make a biodegradable package? What is in that? What makes it break down? Could a mountain climber bring that up with them? So we're going really deep here with our reading, but this is absolutely something that 5th graders could do, and you can, you know, move it up and down with your rigor. These are some of the design thinking graphic organizers, and this is also in the Google Drive that I'm going to give you to help students organize their thoughts while they're doing their research in reading and after. So after your students have researched through their guided reading groups, they've created their physical prototypes using the supplies that you've provided for teachers in the makerspace, then it's really important that students have a way to share their work and their information. So we created a STEAM day at the end of each trimester, and it was an all-day, whole school day where students went from classroom to classroom and looked at other students' work while the students explained it to them, almost like a traveling science fair. I have a spreadsheet in the Google Drive on how I organized the students. You can see here they're listening to the presentation. Some had posters, some had videos that they showed. These are
Hi, sorry to interrupt. You have about 5 minutes left until we'll go back in the main room.
Great, thank you so much. These are our autism rooms because we have a LEAP program on campus. So they use sentence starters to explain their projects. And they also had their communication boards on iPads with specially programmed buttons to give them vocabulary about their projects. So we are an extremely inclusive campus. We wanted everybody to be included in the STEAM vertical alignment and presentation. We had a career panel or a college panel. We invited college students from our local university that were in STEM programs relating to that trimester's topic. And we asked them to tell us about their programs, how they got interested, jobs they were looking forward to, because we're an avid campus. So we're very career future orientated because we're fine with trade schools and such as well. We also have shelving in our hallways for students to display their projects. So this is so simple. You can ask Lumberyard to donate some wood for you, grab some brackets. I have name tags in the Google Drive for you if you'd like to use them. And students can switch out their projects, save their own dedicated space to put their projects if a STEAM day isn't coming up. And we also hosted a whole district maker fair. So every school in the district had a table. This was our table, and we did Harry Potter LED wands. So the students taped batteries and LED lights between popsicle sticks, and they chose colors based on their Harry Potter house. And it was just a really, really fun activity. But we had fifth graders hosting and explaining how a circuit is made and all of that. We've done animation with our kids. So lots of different things there. This slide is available for you to do some reflecting later. We're obviously running out of time now, but the whole STEAM, that was all put together in basically a year. I sat down and said, what, if I could do anything, what do I want my campus to look like, integrating literacy and STEAM? And so I put my wishes down on this. I asked myself, what resources would I need? And what is my current reality blocking that from happening right now? And then I just punched through it and made it happen. So that is what we are doing on our campus. I'll stop share. Well, actually, I'm going to share one more thing with you here. So I'm going to give you the link. This is the coaching presentation resource folder. You have the PDF version so that all the links are live, the PowerPoint version. If you download this, all the links will be live in here for you. This is sort of the static version of this. And then you have STEAM resources, the Jan Richardson resources that we showed you, and then Laura and I's contact information right here. If you want to, sorry, I'm just clicking everything right now. If you want to email me, I have a huge Google Drive of resources available that I can share with you. I just didn't want to make the link public because there's so many resources in there. So if you put your email in the chat here, or you want to email me privately, I'm happy to add that to you. And it has so many, I think I'm up to 45,000 digital resources, and there's so many resources.
Gosh, that's crazy.
I know I'm a little obsessive when it comes to that kind of stuff, but let me go ahead and put a link to that Google Drive in here. I just had it. And then of course I copied something else in between. But are there any questions? I feel like we're running out of time.
We have 1 minute.
Why is there space there? Okay, there you go. I put the live link in there. So if you click that link, you get our Google Drive with all of our stuff.
And I know Lisa had some questions in the chat. Hopefully I was able to help with my responses.
And I have one quick question. Who was selected for the guiding reading articles? Did the teachers select those articles themselves with the reading? You're using the Fountas and Pinellas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the FMP or the Fontes and Pinnell, what is an assessment. So it's used to help figure out what students' reading level is. And then
Okay.
from that, they can go ahead and choose an article that fits with whatever the focus was for that.
Okay, so the teacher selected the articles, and do you have opportunities for students to select articles too on the topic? Yeah, afterwards?
Yeah, I think a lot of teachers do that. They'll have sort of a broader topic, and students can select an article or even a book sometimes within that topic. I've seen it done a couple times. It's not as widely practiced, I don't think, as just having the teacher choose, but I do like having that student choice within that space as well.
We were going to do an Avid one-pager on pollution in the ocean, and I had 4 different articles about different types of pollution, like microplastics and various issues with pollution, and the students could pick the one that they were most interested in for their one-pager. So that's an option as well, to just have a bunch of different packets made.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you. That was